Now, one of the teachings you offer in the book, Whatever Arises, Love That, is an encouragement to people to create a personal love statement. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that, what a personal love statement might be.
Absolutely, is where we use all of our past experiences almost like a roadmap for our own spiritual salvation. And so if we could think about, and again, this isn't done with any kind of blame or malice, but if we could just think back in our lives to anyone who has really hurt us, or who was the character in your past that had the deepest effect on you. And in order to create your personal love statement, you would ask yourself, what are the words I've either never heard before, or what are the words I didn't hear enough of? And whatever the words another character from your past either didn't say or didn't say enough of is the exact sentence that we then, like a mantra, begin saying to our heart on a regular basis. Because what's so interesting to realize about healing is that in all of us there are words that we've waited to hear. But we've waited for other characters to say those words to us, not knowing that if we become the ones that say those words to ourselves, the healing is the same. So in Whatever Arises, Love That, I talk about it as we're building our own, or we're creating our own personal love revolution. And the revolution is that we're no longer waiting for others to tell us the things we want to hear. We become the ones that tell ourselves those words, and we heal ourselves, and we heal our entire reality from the inside out.
What might be, do you think, some phrases that many people have always wanted to hear that they haven't heard, just as examples?
Sure. A very popular one is, you are safe. Of course, I love you. I always want to hear what you have to say. There's an important reason why you're here. You're beautiful. You were wanted. It is not a mistake that you are here. I'm so thankful to be a part of your life. You can do no wrong. And so we really, sometimes we need to hear certain adjectives, like we wanted to be told we were beautiful, we wanted to know that we were safe. Sometimes the words that a being may need to hear is, I'm so sorry I did that to you. And of course, we're not saying it to ourselves as if we've done something wrong to ourselves. We are simply becoming the one who says to ourselves the words we need to hear instead of waiting for a character to evolve and give us that gift authentically. So it really is, a personal love statement is something that can change on a weekly basis, a daily basis, but it really is the ability, it's a revolutionary ability to say, what am I waiting to hear? And can I be the one that starts to say that to myself? Now, in the beginning, it may not feel like as powerful as if someone else was telling you, because the lack of authenticity is just your subconscious mind saying, you haven't done this before. And so if we regularly get in the habit of just saying to ourselves these beautiful words, the subconscious mind begins to recognize it as familiar instead of foreign. And at that point, we begin to emotionally resonate with the words, whether we're saying it to ourselves or someone else is gifting us with those phrases.
As you're talking, I'm imagining that I could get into my car and maybe listen to the GPS give me directions, but it could say things like, you're looking particularly beautiful today, or, could tell me all these messages. I'm serious. It seems like there could be an app for this, Matt.
I think there should be, because I think and even in our own spiritual practice, because I look at human interaction or our communication, our interpersonal communication, I look at that as one of the most powerful forms of spiritual practice. Because when we interact with a human being, we have an opportunity to either make one of two choices. And that is, I'm going to speak the words based on the credibility of how I'm perceiving another or how I think another is perceiving me. Or consciously we can say, I use my interactions with others and I use my words to constantly practice giving to others the words that I've always wanted to hear. And what we start to realize through the grace of unity consciousness is that the more often we are gifting others with the words we've always wanted to hear, our body is responding exactly the same as if we live in a world where people are constantly saying that to us.
Now, in your own life, how did you come to this discovery about the personal love statement? Did you actually do it? Did you write one for yourself, and did it change things for you?
Oh, absolutely. Every aspect of this book that I've written is something that I have practiced in my own life because I wanted to see the effect before I started teaching it. What I had realized before I started teaching Whatever Rises, Love That, because I have gone through so many different levels of spiritual awakening beginning when I was 8 years old, and there was a certain insight I had at an age, and I think it was kind of in my early adulthood, where I had this spontaneous realization that my spiritual evolution could not be defined by the amount of mystical experiences I've had. And even as someone who has had many mystical experiences and encounters with angels and all these kind of really vivid experiences that for me, even to this day, happen on a daily basis, there was something deeper inside of me that said I can't base my evolution on these mystical experiences, but on the relationship I have with reality. And there was a part of me that could still see, despite how many groundbreaking awakenings I had had and all these big vivid experiences, there was still a part of me that was hiding. There was still a part of me that wasn't interacting with every being and aspect of reality as the divine itself. And so it was my desire to meet everything as divinity. It was my desire to take my journey as deep as possible that literally erupted the focus of love. And from that understanding, Whatever Rises, Love That came to be. And so I went through all the steps of it, including creating a personal love statement. And I began to say to myself, not the words I never heard when I was a child, but actually what I discovered is that I was waiting for these to be the words that I say to myself. I mean, the words that I would say to myself, I love you, you're amazing, you are wonderful, you're powerful. These were words my parents had told me, but for some reason there was a part of me that didn't really take it in until I was the one that confessed those words to myself. So that was the uniqueness of my journey, where I wasn't saying to myself personally words that were lacking from my past. They were just words that I hadn't said and admitted to myself.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm imagining someone listening who says, God, I love it when there are people in my life who say things to me like, your ideas are so interesting, creative, and fabulous, or, I absolutely love and cherish you. And so people know the power of hearing these words. But as you alluded to, for some people, when they go to say them to themselves, I'm going to say to myself, I absolutely love you. There's something that doesn't quite land. I think you mentioned because their subconscious isn't used to hearing it in their own voice. So how do we cross over that bridge, if you will, to starting to get comfortable to really talk to ourselves that way? We know it's valuable, but it's still awkward. I'm going to really talk to myself that way? I don't believe it. Feels contrived.
Right. Well, what's really interesting is I think that when we are hearing those words from other people, there's a perception of, I am who I am, and this person is another. And when those words come my way, it seems to really kind of validate a part of our egos, and that's not a bad thing. It's just that's what part of us seems to get lit up. Even though it is touching the innocence of our heart, it's like the ego starts to feel very gratified, which is a wonderful thing. And when we become the one that turns in and says those words to ourselves, because the giver of the words and the receiver of the compliments at that moment are one and the same, and there isn't one character interacting with another, the reason it feels so strange is because as you're saying those words to yourself, because the giver and the receiver are one and the same, the ego begins to dissolve and integrate instead of remain separate from another character to be gratified by. So even though in the beginning people may say, God, this feels so interesting, or it's not landing, it's because the ego that's waiting to be gratified is dissolving by the power of your own self-love instead of being filled up by what someone else will say to you.
Mm-hmm. That's very profound, Matt.